We're rolling. Okay, cool. Mr. Scott Brown. We've known each other 15 years. I had an accountant before that, and she bailed.
Yeah, I called you.
And you called me. And this was 15 some odd years ago. I had been going through my divorce or getting ready to. So I was emotionally a little
strung out a little bit.
And you're like, hey, my name is Scott Brown. I'm going to be your new accountant. And I was like, what? Who the fuck are you? What is this about?
Yep, and I told you, calm down, and I explained, seal your soul to practice. And the rest is, as they say, history in that sense. So.
Man. So when you say seal your soul to practice, that's a loaded statement right there.
Yeah.
She had a lot of clients, but she was also an heiress of...
Her dad owned some massive grocery store in Montreal that supposedly covered like 3 city blocks. I couldn't even tell you exactly where it is, but it is supposedly world famous.
So when that happened, were you overwhelmed? Were you like, obviously you and Celia were colleagues?
I had just met her about a month before. I was looking to expand my practice a little bit. The easiest way to go do it was buy something. So I started talking to her and I bought the practice from her, is what I ended up doing.
Maybe she was on the hunt for somebody to...
She interviewed about 4 different people, and she and I just seemed to click. And so I was the person she chose out of the 4 people.
And in a situation like that, is it customary for the person selling to not speak to their client?
No, usually they give them a heads up.
That's what I was going to say.
To give them a heads up. Again, it depends. Celia was going through some other issues. I do her ex-husband's tax returns. Been doing that for about 15 plus years too. Yeah.
Wow.
And he's a trip. He is a funny guy.
All right, Scott Brown, ladies and gentlemen. Now, the reason why I love Scott so much is obviously because you're a great guy. You're an amazing person.
I appreciate that.
Family man, absolutely. Astute businessman, your own practice, all these things. You have some incredible accolades. You manage so much. Give us the rundown. What does Scott Brown do on a daily basis to help people such as myself?
First and foremost, my concept is just helping people. Tax, business, family. It's like you walk into the office and you figure you got a lot of hats on. So by trade, I'm an attorney. So some days I walk in, I'm a therapist. Some days I walk in, I'm a tax guy. Some days I walk in, I'm an accountant. Some days I'm just a ear and I just sit there and I listen. Because you realize that we all have our own problems. Some are bigger than others. Some people think they're bigger than others. But at the end of the day, how can I help somebody get through their day, whether it's financial matters, whether it's kid matters? Because you've seen the gamut. You see the divorce, death, you see it all. So what can I do to help and just put people at ease? That's the bottom line.
Isn't that interesting when you zoom out at a macro level that, like you said, whether it's children being born, families starting, families ending, life ending, that there's one common thread, and it starts with an F. And it's not the 4-letter word.
Yeah. It's a friendship.
Finance.
And it's friendship. It's really friendship. I think you and I are really not we're more friends than anything else. And that's the way I've always looked at it. For me, it's never been about the money. The money's always been part of the process. It's always about, hey, can I help you? Because it's a long-term relationship. If I'm helping you, I'm going to get paid for whatever I do, and it's going to be reasonable. We're both going to walk away like we got something from it, versus that I'm going to basically burn everybody. And I just don't, there's so many accountants and so many attorneys out there, and I've worked for some over the years. Get in, get your money, get out.
Yes, and
that doesn't work for me.
That was the MO of my accountants in the past. I've always had an accountant who wanted to spend as little time with me as possible.
Yep. And that is, we're all busy, and I understand it. And unfortunately for myself, I'm a workaholic, so it dovetails into that. That's not the purpose. The purpose is, I want to listen, I want to hear, I want to know. Because I'm an attorney also, I look at it, okay, got married, want to buy a house, want to fund the 529 plan, want to fund your retirement, how do I get from here to here? Because in all honesty, if you start at 22, graduated college, you blink your eyes and you're 55.
Man, you can say that a million times over.
It's the truth. It's the honest to God truth.
It is.
And to say, okay, how do I get from here to here with my sanity? And it's hard, especially when you also have kids, because the world and the social media, and you see all that stuff now, and you read about suicides and depression and anxiety, and you worry. I worry for my kids. I worry for my clients' kids. And in fact, just as a side note, one of the gentlemen in my office, another accountant, he's 72. I've had a lot of conversations with him because I've seen my kids go through some things, and I understand that when you go down the proverbial rabbit hole, it's hard to get out sometimes. If you can't claw out yourself, you need somebody to drop that ladder to help you climb out of that rabbit hole.
Man, great segue, because that's exactly what you did for me. For a long time, probably almost a decade, I had stacks and stacks of invoices from you that you said, hey man, don't worry about it. I said, Scott, it's killing me. You said, no, don't pay any of it. And I said, what? I don't understand. He said, no, listen, one day you're going to make more money, and that's when you'll pay me. And you said, don't worry about it. Until then, relax. I got you. That's not the typical relationship with a financial management type person and their client. It's serendipitous that we met. And I feel very grateful and fortunate and lucky. How does one go about seeking out somebody like you for their business and their lives?
Hard. Your situation was looking at you as a single father, going through a crazy divorce, supporting your daughter, and knowing that you're in and out of court to basically do the best for your daughter. So to me, what I would look for is somebody that basically family over everything else. If family is the overriding ideal, then that's where it goes. Because to me, if I'm okay, I don't need your money. I'd rather see you take your money and make sure you have your daughter away from whatever bad influences and that she's doing well. And knock on wood, she's now, what, 17?
15. She'll be 16 in August.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 15, 16, she's thriving. That to me is more important than anything else in the world.
Talk about that, because the reason why I believe, and I've learned this over the years, like you said, I was 20 something and now I'm 50, and it was a
blink of an eye.
Blink of an eye. So the most important thing, what I'm realizing, is that when you talk about finances, it's not the pursuit of money for the sake of monetary things. It's to make sure that your family is well taken care of.
Exactly.
Right? After you're gone for many years, or even while you're here.
My kids now are 28 and 24. My son's graduating college next month, or 2 months in May. The thing for them is my kids are very athletic, so I've spanned the globe with them with athletics. So that was me traveling, whether it's my daughter around the country, playing collegiate basketball, my son playing hockey in the US or Canada, and playing collegiate hockey. It's the type of stuff that I'm there to support that and give them the platform to do what they want to go do.
And you and your wife are so in tune with that, saying, yes, let's do it. Let's support them. I love that about you, John.
At some point, I want to make sure they're productive members of society.
Yeah.
So the conversation you said about finances and money and having enough, it's interesting that you said that, because my son wants to get into investment banking and hedge funds. He's got these grandiose ideas about making this and buying this and doing that. And I always say, the more you make comes with a price. So there's a price you pay for what you want to generate and how you want to do it. And you can define wealth in so many different ways. And I try to get that through to him, that wealth is not just the number of zeros on your bank account. Wealth is experiences. Wealth is family. Wealth is knowledge. He's going through that concept right now of, yes, I want to play hockey, but I also want to start my career. Yes, I want to play hockey. I also want to go to grad school. Yes, I want to play hockey. I want to meet somebody significant. And I go, you're 24. It's all going to work out. When you're 24, if you have the ability to go overseas and play hockey and experience other cultures,
take it.
Do it. Why? Because you can only do it now.
Okay, I'm so glad you said that. When I was 24, I had a very similar experience. I could have went to Spain to play in a Beatles cover band in Madrid.
Okay.
I could have gone to Berkeley in Boston on a full scholarship. I could have gone to the University of Miami on a full scholarship. But instead, guess what I chose to do?
Want to make money.
Because I had a gig.
Yeah.
And I was making $600 a week in 1992. So I thought I was living large. So really, when you put that into context, it's profound. But how do you get a young 20-something to understand that?
You don't treat them as a child. I basically said, look, I'm going to give you a safety net so you don't have to struggle. My parents never made a lot of money. I took on a lot of debt to go through college, law school, and get my LLM. My kids don't have to do that. But their schoolwork and their athletics was their job. So their job was, and when I say job, it was, I'm not a parent that says if you don't get straight A's, you're in trouble. I just want to know if you tried. Because if you basically gave the effort, we all fail. If anyone says they never failed, they're lying to you.
Amen to that.
So I just want to know you gave the effort. And if you gave the effort and you failed, let's figure out what happened. But if you didn't, great. But don't expect the next time it's going to be all roses. I'm a sports guy myself. I'm a baseball player.
And what does it take to get to success?
A lot of failure. And so what I used to do when I was coaching baseball, younger kids, and we're going back many years, I would ask the kids, who's your favorite player? And a lot of them, Derek Jeter, A-Rod, all the 9 yards. So I would go to them, I go, does anybody know what Derek Jeter hit last year? And somebody goes, oh, he hit 300. So I go, okay, so if Derek Jeter got up 10 times and he hit 300, how many hits did he get? So somebody would say he got 3. Okay, so I said, okay, wait a second. If he got up 10 times, he got 3 hits, then he basically made an out 7 times. So he failed 70% of his time.
What a great analogy.
And then I said to the kids, how much did Derek Jeter make last year? $22 million. He failed 70% of his time, and he still made $22 million. So then I turned to the next kid, I go, if you ever throw your bat again, what's going to happen? Because they got to understand, failure is part of life.
It is. It's
so much part of life.
Stairs to success.
Yes.
Literally.
And to me, my kids are athletic, so it came easier for them. But to me, athletics or music or anything, there is a process. And you got to learn how to play or work with others. You got to learn how to understand the dynamics of others. You got to learn how you may not get your way every single time. At the end of the day, you take all those little pieces and you build to where you are. But then the last part of the equation for both of my kids was, look, if you want this, you got to work at it. Michael Jordan said you need, 10,000 hours to be an expert? Wayne Gretzky said you'll miss 100% of the shots you never take. So I said to them, if you want this, you got to do it. So when my kids were of driving age, guess what? They were at the ice rink at 6 a.m. They were in the basketball court at 6 a.m. They went to go make plans with their coaches. Whatever they wanted to go do it. It wasn't me telling them, hey, waking you up, you got to get out there. You know? That's
the alarm goes off at 4:30, you wake your ass up.
Yeah.
You get ready, do your routine, get your shit together.
Yeah, so the reality is you basically work with what you have, and everyone's got their strengths, everyone's got their weaknesses. There's no such thing as adversity. There's no such thing that you can't go through. Now, you may be limited in resources to help you with certain things, but you got to find the means to go do it. You got to try. You got to try. I had a coach in my life when I was playing years and years ago that basically said, look, 90% of life is showing up. Some days you wake up and you feel like crap. Other days you wake up, you can rule the world.
Isn't that crazy?
You don't know. It could be you didn't sleep well. It could be a million different things. As long as you put one foot in front of the other and you show up, be present. And as long as you're present, it's the way it just comes across that you're there. One of the other things that I taught my son, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. What you have to be is a kind person. You have to be empathetic, listen, interact.
Yes.
Because if you do that, and one of the other things I taught my kids, eye contact to me is very important. If you do that, people are going to gravitate towards you. They're going to think you have your shit together. Because my son calls me all the time and says, Dad, everybody thinks I have my shit together. My brain's going 8,000 miles away in different directions. And I go, you do have your shit together. You're just 24 and you're in a rush.
You're in a rush.
You're in a rush.
And you're erratic, and you're creative, and you're hungry,
Yes.
and you're anxious.
Which is going to
all
suit
these
you
things.
well later
That's
on.
right,
Yeah.
because you're going to grab life by the horns, so to speak.
I always tell him there's an old Billy Joel song, Vienna. Listen to Vienna. The lyrics are so apropos. Really listen to it.
Scott, where did you learn this modus operandi, if you will? Because I have to say, I think that's why you and I connected so well, because we both adhere to this philosophy. What instilled it in you?
In all honesty, I was a very shy kid growing up. I'm more on the quiet side. My personality came out when I was playing sports. I was a baseball player, still am. I still play. I just felt comfortable in that setting.
On the field.
Where you can look at me and I didn't mind you watching me. I didn't have to talk. I was able just to be there. But sometimes when you do that, and I'll say you be a wallflower, because I never was a wallflower, but you take a step back and you see, how do I want to be treated? There's so many people in this world where I've worked with, which they're just asses. The reason I'm on my own is I was a partner in a Beverly Hills firm. One of the partners I had was an ass. I took an 80% pay cut to go on my own. And 80% but the reality was I took a bet. I took a bet on myself. Now, when I took the bet on myself, stress, worry, anxiety, my head was spinning 6 ways from Sunday. But then I had a buddy call me, who I worked with, is an attorney also. And he goes, what are you worried about? I go, I'm doing all this for the first time. I don't know what I'm doing. He goes, what do you mean you don't know what you're doing? He goes, have you ever failed in business? I go, no. Have you ever not made money in business? I go, no. He goes, so? Yes, so what? This is new. He goes, no, it's not. It's the exact same thing, but instead of doing it for the big guy, you're doing it for yourself. And show up, one foot in front of the other. Day one, 15 years later, I've built the same practices I built in every other place I've been. It's the same shit. He was 100% right. I did it the way I want to do it, by treating people the right way.
That's why the career musician exists.
To treat people the right way.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to show that we can do it on our own terms.
Oh, yeah. You can. Again, how do you want to measure success? Don't always measure it by cents and dollars. Measure it by what you get out of it. What are you getting out of it? I've gone through clients in my office crying for deaths, divorces, sick parents, dementia, husbands cheating on wives and fathering children out of wedlock. I've had clients that basically got married in the States and got married in Europe. So we got bigamists. I've gone through everything.
Hold on. You're an accountant, tax attorney. You're not a counselor and a psychologist.
Doesn't matter. You're there to basically, no, again, I'm not a family law attorney, so I'm not going to tell them. I was talking to...
Yeah, but you handheld me through that.
But yeah, because I did it based on what? I did it based on experience and based on empathy. That's what it is. I was talking to a potential new client yesterday. Bad divorce, and all the stuff, and I'm like, protect yourself, make sure that you're fine, but also you got to protect your children. All various ages, protect those kids. Because at the end of the day, that's what you have those kids. Empathy goes a long way. The rest of it is, you could go across the street and work in Home Depot and make money. You can go be a lawyer, a judge, an actor, or a musician. There's many ways to make money. But again, do you enjoy it? Do you like it?
You could be a musician.
You've made money as a musician.
But that's right. And that's why this podcast exists, because I've made six figures for many years. And you have accounted for those six figures for many years. Okay, this is a great segue. I went through a hellacious divorce, and you helped me. Bro, you helped me settle this six-figure outstanding debt with the Internal Revenue Service, and I only paid
15 cents on the dollar.
I was going to say pennies on the dollar, and that's because of you.
Yeah, you go through issues and people, and there's a process the IRS has called offer and compromise. and you have to fit into the parameters. And I probably maybe do 1 to 3 a year, because a lot of times it just doesn't fit. And I'm not going to basically say, okay, we're going to file the offer in compromise. It's going to cost you $5,000. There's a lot of work to do for it, because it's not just getting it, filing it. There's also a lot of follow-up that goes with it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to waste your money. I'm going to give you an honest answer if I think your fact pattern works.
The OIC that you did for me, you said it's going to cost money, but don't worry about paying me yet.
Yes.
You stacked it on top of my outstanding invoices, which I have paid, thank God. Now, that's amazing, but the OIC was such a huge...
It's a burden. It's a relief. In fact, I'm just finalized an OIC yesterday for a client that unfortunately, they've lost a couple of kids during their lifetime. The husband has gone through a series of strokes, cancer, the whole 9 yards. And it's like, they've had enough family tragedy. Yeah, they screwed up in not paying their taxes, but there was a reason why they didn't do it. Needed money for hospital bills, needed money for therapists because 2 children died at a younger age that shouldn't have passed away.
How do you corroborate that to a representative from the IRS?
So basically, when you file, you're doing 2 aspects of filing for the OIC. One is the overall financial. Here's what we owe, here's what we make, here's what we need to live on. That leaves this amount of money over. Then you go into the aspects of just life. I'm disabled now, I cancer, I'm this, I'm that. And part of it, sadly, is who you get as an IRS agent. So unfortunately, but that's so much in life. You call up for customer service, you may get the great customer service rep, you may not. And I filed an OIC once for a buddy of mine, the same individual, in fact, believe it or not, that said, what are you worried about? He ran into some issues. I had his OIC. It was perfect. And then it got denied at the last minute. And I'm on the phone with the agent. And I go, what happened? She goes, there was a brokerage account that had $16,000 when you filed the OIC. By the time, because it takes the IRS 6, 8, 9 months.
It takes forever, yeah.
By the time they got to it, that brokerage account didn't exist. I said, yes, the money was utilized for a purpose. They go, what was the purpose? And I go, the gentleman has a girlfriend for the last 5 years. The girlfriend has always had kidney issues. Went into the hospital to go see if he was a match for the kidney. He was not a match for her kidney because she had some rare. They went through the hospital registry and did a kidney chain. He donated here, they donated here. By the time you got around, it took 9 people to get his girlfriend the kidney. Guess what? In the course of time, he used most of that $16,000 to basically get this together. They weren't married. So the agent I was talking to said, it doesn't work because they're not married, and I had a bunch of choice words at the time because it was ludicrous. I said I need to speak to your senior representative or your superior. Got on the phone, and the lady I spoke with, amazing. She
had compassion.
She had capacity, empathy, but she said, look, I can't approve it how it is. I'm going to reject it. I want you to refile it with me on this. Got fast-tracked. So, again, the stupidity of here, this one individual saved 9 lives, and he spent $14,000 or the $16,000 he had to save 9 lives. IRS should have gotten their money, but for whatever reason they didn't. But isn't human life worth more than $14,000?
Absolutely. Now, let me ask you this. That money that was owed to the IRS, what would the IRS do with that money per se?
It's all part of the...
Where would it go?
It's all part of the budget. There's no... It's like you can't...
It's hard to allocate it.
Yeah, I mean, definitively. You look at the overall budget, because it may go into this account, may go into this general fund, but all of a sudden there's a hurricane in Houston, and now FEMA's got it.
It's going to go...
Yeah, there's no...
And when you're talking about tens of thousands of dollars, that's literally a speck of sand in the overall budget.
scheme. We're going through these massive ranges out of California right now. You drive down any of these roads, it's potholes. Where's that money going to come from to go fix all these roads? It's got to come from taxes. The bottom line, it's where it's got to come. But unfortunately, we can't direct it. We put people in office, or some of us do, and others don't vote for that person. You just hope that they got the empathy and sympathy and they want to do the right things. They want to do the right thing.
That's why I love your MO. It comes down to friendship, family, empathy.
There's nothing. Yeah, I always look at somebody, people come in my office, and it's a small tax return. And there's a lot of times if I'm just doing this, I'm like, what do I owe you? Nada. Nothing. What do you mean? I go, it's like the $300 is not going to change my life. So I don't really care about it. I'll barter in some cases. Hey, look, we'll do this or we'll do that. Or some cases I don't even care. It doesn't matter.
Speaking of which, how is your guitar playing coming along?
Not as good as I wish because I don't have the...
We got to get you back in.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I can attest to that. Okay, so let's get down to the bare bones. Okay, the brass tacks, as you say. An independent contractor, is the term independent contractor synonymous with a self-employed person?
Yes, in some ways, because you could be self-employed but have an LLC. You could be self-employed and be part of a partnership. You could be self-employed and have an S Corp like you have, which is your loan-out corporation. Self-employed, in essence, is you work for yourself in some capacity. 1099s are, again, if you're incorporated, you technically don't receive a 1099. So usually you get a 1099 if you're not an incorporated entity, unless you fall under certain few categories, accountants, lawyers, those still get 1099s. The reality nowadays, it's hard to basically delineate yourself as a 1099 unless you're totally really controlling your own, meaning you determine when you work, you determine who you work for, what the hours are, all those things. Now you're really working for yourself.
But if Sony Records sends me a 1099 and Warner Brothers sends me a 1099 and Bob Jones Entertainment sends me a 1099, what does that quantify me as?
Like for you, you have an S corporation.
Right.
So it's still part of your S corporation because you're self-employed, because you're the only employee of your S corporation.
Of that S corp. You set up that S corporation for me.
I did.
Under your judgment, versus an LLC.
Yeah, because the basic reason for the two, an LLC taxes you on what's called gross receipts. So if you made $300,000, okay, gross, you're going to pay a California tax liability. It's gross receipts, basically. On the federal side, you're going to basically pay no federal tax with a LLC. Everything passes through to you. You pay it on your individual return. The difference is that $300,000, let's say that's your profit, all of that is subjected to self-employment tax. So self-employment tax is basically your FICA taxes, Social Security taxes, but you pay it if you're self-employed for yourself as the employee and for yourself as the employer.
You pay it twice?
You pay it twice. Whereas the reason we use an S Corp is that same $300,000 profit, I don't have to give you a salary of all $300,000. Maybe I give you a salary of $100,000. Guess what? You only have to pay FICA taxes on $100,000. So the idea is basically, how do we save money? Part of it is the play with FICA taxes and set everything up. The other aspect you're also looking for is if you're doing some international stuff where you're paying taxes overseas, you want to basically be able to claim those foreign tax credits on your individual return. Everything passes through. It all passes through.
There's a misnomer right now for a long time going on that you have to have an LLC. But as musicians,
it's more
there's
than
no liability for a musician, right?
You could have liability. Let's say you're on stage, you're hired, and let's say you trip one of the band members or something and they fall off the stage.
But if I'm working with Shania Twain, doesn't she have?
She's contract. She's got general liability insurance.
Liability. What do you call that?
You got workers' comp and general liability.
Compensation. Yeah.
But a lot of times you're going to need your own. So they may have it for the tour, but you also want it for yourself to cover in case you do. Because here's the thing: if you did something really stupid, negligent, they may not cover it there. You want to be covered yourself.
But if you're only making $3,000 a week,
still want to have it. I still have it. Just because insurance.
Really?
He's going on a worldwide tour, and I basically got all his insurance.
And he
set
has
up.
his own workers' comp.
He's got his own workers' comp. He's got his own general liability policy. It was required, which is, to me, it makes the most sense. Cover yourself and be protected as best as. Nothing may ever happen, but at least you got the coverage and you're okay at that point in time. These, to me, are if you're going to generate income that's not service related, real estate, royalties, other stuff that's not, because there's no self-employment tax with it. It's basically gives you a protection and a way to go
Is
around.
LLC almost synonymous with passive income?
They're in a lot of ways. If you look at real estate, yes, it is. So now that's the way I would use LLCs, is more on that type
So
of
if Scott, if I said to you, I'm a producer, songwriter who has 75% of my income based on royalties, would you then put me in an LLC?
So again, are you providing, so how did you get those royalties?
I produced and I songwrote.
So some of that, so you got some service income first. The reality is you got some service income, and so I would still use your royalties with your S Corp because you had to perform a service.
But the thing is, in the music industry, that front-loaded service is very minuscule. It's only maybe 20% that I sat down with the client for a month, I wrote those songs, produced those songs, but then those same intellectual property pieces continue to earn me money from years and decades beyond that.
I mean, if you're basically just have a straight royalty stream, then the question is, are you performing services or is it completely passive income? If it's completely passive income, then potentially an LLC would give you a better answer. Here's the issue on that is, again, how do we structure it again to avoid the self-employment
Of getting
tax.
taxed twice.
Exactly.
Is there such thing as doing both?
No, you really don't want to do that.
Okay.
So I would still use the S Corp for the royalties because I could avoid some of the stuff. To me, if you're in the business that you're going to be doing something to generate the revenue, I want you as an S Corp.
So if I'm on tour with Ariana Grande or anybody, you're going to put me in an S Corp.
I'm going to use your S Corp as a loan out. They call it a loan out corporation.
Right.
That's what it is. So basically, actors, musicians, producers, directors, they all should have that entity because it comes in there. You got your expenses you can layer to reduce your income. Then you got pension planning you could do in that entity too, whether you're doing defined benefit, defined contribution plans, because the game plan is how do I lower what's subject to your pension tax liability. And you could do it a lot easier in a vehicle, and if you do it the right way, it makes much more sense.
And how does that differ from a C Corp?
So all a C Corp is not a pass-through entity. C Corp is not a pass-through. So let's say you had the same $300,000 profit.
Yeah.
So that $300,000.
Wait, 300,000 gross or 300,000 net?
Net. We're going to go net.
Okay.
So that $300,000 net that's in your C Corp, you're going to pay a corporate level tax on that, 22%, give or take. So you're going to pay $66,000 on that 300. So if you do the math, then 300 less 66 is 234. When you start to take that money out, not as a salary, take it out as dividends, you're taxed again. So you're paying two levels of taxation with the C Corp. Now, C Corps are utilized primarily for bigger corporations.
Right. You're talking about 300 million versus 300 grand.
Yes, you're looking at bigger corporations. And again, you got a lot of other tax planning, other shit that you got to do. What are they public? Are they private? The whole 9 yards. But that's why for guys that are in your category, or like I said, directors, producers, agents, that's what you want. You want to have your own fiefdom. That's your S Corp. Money comes in, expenses come to reduce your income, pension planning, whatever I can do, lower your tax liability.
What did you call that?
Your own fiefdom it's got your own basically land control. That's your S Corp is your own fiefdom. I have a client, was an agent, broke away from one agency, went to another agency, and he was basically W-2 employee with the agent. He had a deal that after a certain level of money that he brought in, he would get a kicker over and above what his base was, very substantial base. And I go to him, you're a W-2 employee, Whatever your W-2 says, I slap it in your tax return, you're done. Just done. I said, let's go create an S Corp. You can do it.
That's what you did with me 15 years ago.
Put the S Corp in, went to him and said, okay, based on this, if we come up with $300,000-$400,000 expenses, which is legit because you're doing stuff, we do a defined benefit plan, and there's a couple other things that we could play around with. Based on the two different natures that I just did, based on the amount of money you're generating, I can probably save you $250,000 in tax. $250,000 of tax by making you an S Corp versus putting you as an LLC or as a W-2. So,
what did W-2 be quantified as?
W-2 is just a straight employee. I can't put a pension plan in place for you, defined benefit. I can't deduct expenses. Much better realm to do what you need to do. And that's what you do. You basically figure out how the math works best. Genre, and I'm like, how? And you basically said it's the same way you basically do a financial statement. It's left brain, right brain. I'm as amazed at what you do as you are amazed at what I do. I mean, it's just it's human nature and stuff.
It's so true, because when you're like, hey, blah, 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 X, Y, Z, and I'm like, yeah, I think so.
But I watch you pick up and just change chords, and I'm like, I can't get my hand around there to figure out where G is. But then for me, music, when you have sheet music in front of you, you're composing, you just see it. And I understand that music is math in a lot of ways too, but that's, in my mind, numbers to me is a language. It's words to me. Notes is words to you. That's just the way, that's what I interpret and stuff. I'm amazed. I can't sing, it's not what I can do. To me, there's math all around the world. Whatever you do, whether you're picking up anything, you've always told me music is timing. So it's all math. I used to, when I was coaching baseball years ago, besides talking about the kids about failure and everything else, I was talking to the kids about geometry. And they're like, well, what do you mean geometry? I go, everything's angles when you play a sport. It's angles of how you attack the basketball, how you hit the baseball, how you shoot. So all of it's angles. And so it's like, there's a way to think about things using that. And trust me, I hated geometry as well. It was my worst math subject. But there's still value in it. And just to see how you do it, I would love to be able to just pick up a guitar. I was actually listening to Hair Nation on the way up here, Schenker. And they were this is supposedly like a ridiculous guitar player. This guy is supposed to be off the charts. So I'm listening to I can't remember the name of the song, and I'm like, damn. But then I'm thinking, okay, what about, how does that go to Eddie Van Halen? How does that go with Layla? Eric Clapton. I couldn't think of Clapton's name. Or Eddie Vedder, or stuff like that. Like, how does that all, because they're all very good, but they're all different. Very different. So you see all that, but I also see, when I was taking some lessons with you, and I walked into that studio in Burbank, and there were 60 guitars on the wall, 3 strings, 6 strings, 7 strings, double necks, triple necks, whatever the hell was there. I'm like, how? They're easy. And I go, okay, I'll trust you. It's not, but it's easy to you. That's just the way it works. This is easy to me. I mean,
it's like when you start to say, okay, man, on your schedule C, you have blah, blah, blah. You know what you sound like?
Just
your Charlie Brown voice.
Yeah, I know. My son does the same thing to me. He goes, Dad, wait a second. You did all that in your head? I go, yeah.
Right. That's the other thing.
It's all in my head.
I could say to you, Scott, what is 0.9% of 1.17? And you're like, oh, that's easy.
It's a language to me. It just happens to be a language. My daughter writes exceptionally well. That's what she does as a reporter, as a journalist, as a content maker. So that's her skill set. She's, Dad, I have you to do my taxes forever. Because she doesn't like my son, on the other hand, wants finance, wants hedge fund. He's more of a numbers guy. But he's also got that skill set. He plays hockey and he sees angles. My daughter played basketball. I would sometimes like, how did you make that pass? Like, how did you even see the pass? Like, I couldn't even visualize it. But you can visualize notes. I can visualize numbers. We're all very different.
She can visualize plays.
She sees it. She can break down a game like you would never believe, and it's wow. She just sees it.
She understands it. And everything's a language to itself. And just whether it's music, whether it's math, when you go to the doctor and the doctor gives you the word that's about this long and you like, huh?
One word.
Yeah, it's okay, what does it mean? It doesn't mean anything to you till he dumbs it down. That's what it means. When you were giving me the basic strings and how to go and where the notes were, okay, that was probably for you, it's like, oh, this is very easy. For me, I'm trying to remember the acronym that you gave me to figure out where what notes are which strings. It's just the way our brains process stuff.
And then musician making under $100,000 a year. Do they need an accountant?
Should always have an accountant to help make sure that.
I really think so.
Yeah, because there's expenses that you want to make sure you're claiming, depreciation, there's other stuff that, how do you limit? Also planning, whether you're planning for retirement, to do pension planning. If you have kids, can you do some 529 planning for their education? So there's always questions. You don't need somebody, you got to find somebody that's going to basically work with you that's not going to charge you a gazillion dollars.
What do you think of the storefront places like HR Block and so forth?
Junk.
So
Just
don't
junk.
go to those.
Yeah, you go into an H&R Block, if you got a W-2, you got a couple of 1099s or interest income, and that's about it. I've had clients that go to H&R Block and I look at the returns and these are all fucked up. They're not even worth the piece of paper they're printed on.
Oh, wow.
They're not even worth the piece of paper they're
So
printed
how
on.
does an independent musician go about finding an independent accountant?
Word of mouth, referrals from people that know. And that's really the only way.
Ask people.
Yeah, you really can't just like Google. I was going to say the old yellow pages. You can't do that either. It doesn't work that way. And a lot of it.
Other people in your industry.
Yeah, who do you use? I've been doing it on my own now for about 15 years. I've never advertised. Everything's word of mouth. It's all word of mouth. That's all it is.
But let me ask you this, Scott. The first decade, if I wasn't making six figures, you really wouldn't have entertained me.
I have clients that make less than 20 grand a year. I got clients that make 40, 50 million dollars a year.
Wow.
To me, again, remember, it's not about the money. To me, it's never been about the money. I'm a big believer in karma. You get what you put out there. So my attitude is, can I help you? And there's a downside to that. I've been screwed over the years where I haven't collected fees and people haven't paid me. But I also look in percentage. So if at the end of the day, I've been doing this for 15 years and maybe there's $100,000 I billed I haven't collected, what does that really mean in the course of 15 years? 8 grand a year, 9 grand a year?
Right.
Is it going to change my life?
Not really.
Not at all. No. But I also say, okay, but there's aggravation with anything you do. There's people you meet. I was talking to a client today through email, and she was frustrating and text messages, frustrating the crap out of me because she wanted to know why she paid her estimated tax payment twice for the state of California. I go, I don't know why. I could tell you why I think you paid it twice. Because I gave it to you in March.
I sent you the document.
I gave you the document in March, and I gave you the document again in October because I wasn't quite sure, because I don't know if you paid it in March. But what I do is I basically put a letter and say, if you paid it in March, please disregard.
Disregard.
If you didn't disregard, okay, so you paid it twice.
It's really about reading the whole paragraph.
Exactly, read. And I find a lot, that's the most frustrating part, what I find. People don't read. They flat out don't read. And one of my frustrating parts is if I give you 7 questions, answer the 7.
In black and white.
Answer them at one time. Don't give me 3 here and 2 here and say, did I give you everything? No, you gave me 5 of the 7. Answer the 7 questions. And don't say, I gave you the information. If I'm asking for the information, I fucking don't have it. It's that simple. If I have it, I'm not going to ask the question. It's that simple.
So let me ask you this. A musician that says, hey, I went on tour with Ariana Grande. I made $67,000. But after that, I got canned. And the next year, I made about 30. What does that musician do?
Hopefully they're making some other money some other way. So the reality is, if you're making money in a certain way, at least a reasonable amount, or you got an idea what you're doing, you should have somebody helping you file the returns.
Okay.
I really believe you should have somebody.
You should never go on to those online do it yourself.
Fully, if you have a simple W-2 and two 1099s, yes, I'm not going to save you any money.
But if you're bringing in 20 or more different 1099s,
you want to really sit down, because I sit down through people and I basically say, okay, you're independent, you're around, but you don't have an office. Your house is your office.
right?
I will use some of your rent expense or your home office or whatever. There's things you're not going to know what to do. How can I find certain expenses to save you some money?
Because the average person will not understand that.
They won't think about it.
I'm so glad you brought that up. Not only the business home office, but the business home studio.
Business studio, internet, telephone, storage, utilities, home insurance.
Dry cleaning.
Dry cleaning
Glam.
depends if you're really going on stage a lot. So
But
there's
if you're
certain
out
things,
there,
and you have some things that you're gonna, yes.
And
So,
then gas and mileage.
yes, if you're using your vehicle, whether we're gonna take the standard miles, just do it based on miles, or do it based on actual expenses. So there's a variety of different things. And did you buy assets? Did you buy new guitars? Did you buy amplifiers? Did you buy keyboards?
Computers.
What can we do? What can we
Studio
depreciate that?
You can depreciate that.
Yeah, and some of it you can use Section 179 and depreciate the entire amount in a single calendar year.
Would that be defined as an amortization?
That's depreciation. Yeah, amortization is more, it's not fixed assets, they're intangible assets.
Okay.
So amortization is intangible, depreciation is fixed. So basically computers, furniture, equipment, where leasehold improvements, stuff like that is more depreciation than anything else.
The musician who's just versioning from independent to actual professional,
Okay.
where do they go?
What are they making? What do they do? And if they're starting to get traction in their career, then at that point is maybe they do need that S corporation.
Okay.
They got to find that individual to set them up, to basically do what they need to go do, to set them up for success, for current tax planning, for future tax planning, and then for maybe, if they don't have a family yet, for family tax planning.
Deferred.
Yeah. Because again, what you're looking at in essence is you got to think about it the realm of everything, which is also includes estate planning. Even if you're in your 20s, you should still think about estate planning. You should still have a will and trust. You should still have healthcare directives, because anything can happen to anyone in any single moment. I mean, if you start to make money and you have a significant other, you got married, once you get married, you should have all that stuff in place. You really should. The reality is the shoemaker's kids usually are the ones without shoes, and that's what ends up happening. But the reality is you should get all your ducks in a row, because tomorrow's never promised.
What's the threshold gross salary that you say you better get serious?
If you're netting over 100, you should really have an
gotta
S
get
corp.
serious.
Yeah, you should have an S corp. You should really figure out what you want to go do.
75 and under, what do you do?
It depends. Again, if you don't have a lot of expenses, then your threshold, again, you want to find somebody that's going to basically say, hey, look, I want to grow with you. I'm not going to charge you $5,000. It may be, maybe it's $1,000. That kind of covered the concept of year-end tax planning. It covered the concept of the S-Corp return. It covered your individual tax return. The other thing, what I do, and honestly a lot don't do, if you called me every single day and you had a question, I personally won't bill you for those questions. Now, if you call me every single day and 1 out of those 7 days for that week, you had a question, I go, I need to really research this. I got to figure something out. I'm going to write you either an email or a memo. I'm going to bill you for that, because now I'm really taking some time in something. But if it's really simple or just generic, how many times have you called me, I want to buy this house, I want to do this? Have you ever seen a bill from me on any of that stuff?
No.
It's part of the service.
Park this money over here. What do you think about this?
To me, that to me is the relationship. I don't want to nickel and dime people. There's no value to me to do that. But again, that's me. You're not going to find a lot of people who do that, because they're like 0.1, 0.1, 0.1. I got to get to my hour.
You got to give us some hope. We want to find more people.
It's hard, man. It's hard. It's just,
Man.
hey, it's the bottom line is we're here to help people. At the end of the day, greed, you don't need to be greedy.
That's it.
You just don't need to be greedy.
Nomad here with the Career Musician. Welcome to the fam. If you found this video and information therein useful, do us a favor, like, subscribe, and hit that notifications bell so you can stay up to date on what's happening here. As well, leave us a comment, join the conversation. We want to hear from you. What do you want to learn from us so that we can help you level up your career? We will see you in the studio or on the road, my friends. Check out this next video.